for you to write them out, because sometimes that helps. But this one I really want to know, so I hope you participate. I'm calling out Dr. Eric Pearson, who's been with us for 25 years as well. And Brian Tellerico, the managing editor of RogerEbert.com. And I've invited a film student, the son of Brian Buffini, Adam Buffini. Please join us, Adam. And as I told you, I'm going to let these guys start, but there is a beautiful, beautiful article. If you get a chance to read it, it's a must reading by Matt Zollerseis at RogerEbert.com. And you know, this movie is about young love, and it's about erasing memories, but he also talks about it from the standpoint of being older and getting dementia and losing memory, and even about the morality. And one of the things that I wanted to ask is about the morality of doing something like that, if something like that could exist. In the article, he says it actually does exist through electroshock treatment. But anyway, Eric, will you please start?
Yeah, I will start by, I've been married for over 35 years, and in a life like that, there is messiness, and I wouldn't trade that messiness for anything. And when I saw this film, it just seemed like the messiness was what people want. If I could just move the messiness out of the way, I could have perfection. But the messiness is where the connection is. I'm much more moved by it than I thought I was going to be, because it really just reminded me that as you build relationships, it's everything. You can't just carve out the stuff that is messy, and that ability to sort of love the whole thing, the whole person, I think is really important, and really sort of at the core of what they're trying to get to, right? They're trying to get to that, but they can't get there because there's this messiness that's in the way, and that. And I think and hopefully we can get to this, I think it's particularly timely now because there just seems to be this real effort to curate a perfect life, a perfect relationship, and people just, anything that doesn't fit gets discarded. And I think we become lesser when we try to do that with one another. It's just sort of accept us as the whole thing.
And, well, yes, for that. And we don't learn. We don't learn. I mean, I think the Mary arc is essential to what he's trying to say with this film, which is that if you erase it, you're going to make the same mistake again and again and again and again. We learn from our mistakes, and I think that's a huge part of it. I'm trying to teach my children. I've got 3 relatively young children, all becoming teenagers, which is a very important part of life and learning about things. And I've tried to teach them this lesson, which is that we are as much a product of our mistakes as our successes. We are a product of our failures as much as our successes. And if you try to take those failures out or take those mistakes out or polish them up online, which I think is what you're getting at, like present a perfect version of yourself, A, that's boring, B, that's unrealistic, and C, it's not gonna get you anywhere. Like, you can't be a perfect human being. You'll just make the same mistakes over and over again, or you'll not be truly happy. To be truly happy is to have a life that goes like this. It's not to have a life that goes like this.
Absolutely.
Adam, what did you think?
Hello. Well, I am I'm 4 months younger than this film festival, so I don't have as many memories to go on, but
That's why you're up here, though. We also want an emerging point of view.
well, thank you for that. What I do know is there is a very large part of society that does fantasize about forgetting the negative things that have happened in life, such as hurt from loved ones or generational damage that's been done to them. And for me personally, me and my family, memories are very important to us because when I was about 8 years old, we suffered from the fires that spread through California. And as of such, we lost a lot of our memories. Like, because of things like that, I don't know what the color of my first birthday cake was. Or funny things that you don't think about normally or possibly take for granted. So I do know that the memories that we have, good and bad, have built us up to be the people we are today. Like Joel, once he forgot the memories of Clementine, he forgot a piece of himself. He was a much more watered down and shallow character because of it. So while there is hurt in life and suffering, we have to treasure that just as much as the happiness and the joy, because it makes us who we are. And that's something that can never be replaced. So.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I love going back and watching movies by like Spike Jonze, Charlie Kaufman, who came here with Schenectady, New York, and Michel Gondry. And this time in watching this film, the first time I saw it, I thought, oh, I mean, I really like we see so many films, I like seeing something different sometimes. So I thought, oh, it's kind of magical and, you know, eccentric. This time, and I think it's probably post-pandemic, I look at films a little differently. I look at life a little differently. I recognize maybe mental illness a little more readily than I did before, or anxiety in life, and some of the things that we're talking about wanting to erase things and not having the messy parts of life. And before I saw a lot of what the Kate Winslet character was as quirky, and today I saw it more as somebody who maybe needed more help. That's
Needed love and compassion. Yeah.
and compassion,
Yeah.
yes.
You can't erase those kind of people. You can't erase those kind of interactions, or what's the point of any of this?
Oh, today though, the other thing I got about that I actually loved is the idea that if you really truly love someone, will you love them forever? So that if your memory of them is erased and you meet them again, is there something that draws you together anyway? And I like that concept.
Yeah, it was this idea that they were drawn together even through all of the sort of trying to remove things. But you asked about the moral question, and this is a really sort of Neil Postman wrote a great book called Amusing Ourselves to Death, in which he talked about sort of the influence of television. But one of the things that he sort of put forward is that if we embrace technology, we should ask ourselves, what is the problem that we're trying to fix? Because we tend to sort of just embrace things and say, well, what is the problem? And in this film, this technology would fail miserably because it's never really clear what is the problem that the technology is trying to fix, which is this, you know, to remove this from people. But is that really a problem? And Postman also asked, what is the problem, and how do you define what is actually problematic? And this film really made me think about this idea of embracing technology to solve a problem without really having a problem that needs to be solved, and the consequences of that.
One of the things I love about this movie, and this time in particular, you just spoke a lot about technology, There's a version of this film that's way CGI heavy, super science fiction, but I feel like this is the perfect blend of writer and director because Gondry loves practical effects. He loves actual building a big table with cookies for Jim Carrey to stand next to. He loves rain. The sequence of the house falling apart is one of my favorite sequences in film history. The idea that memories are collapsing and changing, and you get to actually see it. So Gondry, who worked a lot in music videos, I don't know if anyone knows that, and like in those music videos, he did some great stuff for Bjork and a few other people. He always did in-camera practical effects. So him being married to Kaufman's big, grand ideas, I mean, this could have played like a cartoon if you think about it, but that grounding, that tactileness, you can feel the rain as it's falling in their room, and you can smell the snow and the sand and the ice. I love that aspect of this film. It's just one of my favorite things about it.
What did you notice from technical aspects of the film?
So, trying to look at it from a filmmaking standpoint, this film is very stylized with, color temperatures, opening up, shutters, like lighting. It was all very exaggerated, and through those aspects, it really drew into more romantic or tender scenes versus cold and isolated. So it created this very strong pull towards love versus being ripped away and left out on an island, so to speak. So it was amazing to watch.
In film, who are some of your favorite influences or directors?
For me, I really do enjoy classic directors like Steven Spielberg, Christopher Nolan. George Lucas is another inspiration to me. All directors who desire to take the hero's journey and make it relatable to individual people and bring them on their own personal journeys really means a lot to me. Taking someone from reality and dipping them into something grandiose, greater than people can think are possible.
Coppola is still one of my favorites because I always tell my students is I never feel like he's wasted a frame, that there's information in every single frame. But I can be very eclectic because a lot of my tastes are driven by the journey. That I'm always excited about meeting new people in film, people who I don't know, experiences that I'm not familiar with, circumstances that I question my own ability to navigate those circumstances. So I'm really a very sort of wide swath. Chaz and I often meet at Sundance. As part of my teaching, I take about 20 to 25 students to Sundance every year. And the goal is to just expose them to different types of storytelling and different types of filmmakers than what they're going to get at their local Cineplex. And I, after 20 years, I feel really even more excited about what happens when you take people and you immerse them in a space where they get to have different kinds of filmic experiences. It radically changes what they think film can be for them and what they think they can get from it. And it's, after 25 years of coming here and being part of this, it's a blessing that comes around every year to spend time with these films and with these audiences, really feeling like we're going someplace together and really experiencing something. Like I said, the film just affected me much more than I thought it would, because as someone who I teach media, and one of the things that I talk a lot to my students about, sort of technology and things like that, is to question what technology does to their lives and to question how it changes how they relate to the world and to each other. And it can be a very rewarding experience, because oftentimes by the time we critique something, it's already ingrained in our lives. But to be able to do that And to be able to use film as a reference, to be able to say, oh, you know what, let's talk about what happens when you want a carefully curated life and that kind of thing. I go, well, here's a film that I can sort of show you, and then we can have a conversation about that, which is extremely exciting.
Are you going to bring, when I saw you in Cannes last year, and we're going next month, and you said you may be bringing students over this year, are you?
I'll be bringing students in the summer. My course has been approved for the summer of 2025, so I have to go and make some more do some more preparatory work, but in the summer of 2025, I'll be bringing undergraduate students there. They're not gonna be ready for how great that experience is gonna be, but I'm happy to provide for them. And remember, I'm working when I'm doing this.
Have you shown your students this film at all?
I haven't. This is not one that I've used, but I think because it's 20 years old, it really is the type of film I would show them now, and maybe you can speak to that they could see their world in the world of these characters. This idea of sort of the pain. I'm only gonna post the best pictures of my life. I think they can make that connection, and sometimes. For me, that's better because then I let the film teach the class as opposed to sometimes it comes from me and they're like, oh, you're just an old dude that you don't know what it's like to be young. And I'm like, okay, just watch the film.
Adam, for you, from a younger person's point of view, the love story of this, how did this play out for you?
With the love story, a lot of the time I was thinking there seemed to be not a lot of self-love in this film. All the love came from other people, and because of that, it was harder for all the characters to accept themselves and be able to move on with the memories that they had. The secretary at the end was able to accept that herself and move on. She's the only one who displayed that own personal growth before, or I guess after making that decision. So a lot of the time, I was thinking that it was very rooted to insecurities and how viewing the self can be a dangerous thing if it's only through a rose tint from someone else's eyes.
Good observation. And Brian, I want to ask you about, this is a very different role for Jim Carrey. We were so used to seeing him with the muggy face and the comedy, kind of goofy slapstick comedic roles. Talk about Jim Carrey and his acting in this movie as opposed to some of his other films.
Well, this comes 10 years after his breakthrough year. 94 was the year where Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber all came out in the same year, which is crazy. He went from like in living color star to one of the biggest stars in the world. And then he started doing massive hits like Liar Liar and stuff. But this actually comes at the end of what I would call a trio of really important pieces of acting, things where he should have been nominated for every award. Truman Show, he is phenomenal in Peter Weir's Truman Show. Man on the Moon, which is playing here tomorrow night, which is incredible, and another performance that he should have won multiple awards for, and then this. Kate Winslet got an Oscar nomination and it won an Oscar for Best Screenplay, but he didn't get nominated. And I was telling Eric, I kind of feel like this was strike three and he gave up a little bit after this. Like, we haven't seen him do things like this. He makes Sonic the Hedgehog movies and kind of does his own thing, but it's been 20, I miss this Jim Carrey. I think this is his best performance and one of my favorite performances ever. It's so vulnerable. When he's on the ice shouting how he wants to stop, there's just a perfect tenor of his voice. And as you pointed out, he kind of modulates a little bit as the memories are changing. Like, he becomes almost more vulnerable or scared, and then he gets really scared when he goes back into his own past. Kate is phenomenal. Kate is always phenomenal. But I feel like Carrey didn't get enough credit for being so good here. And maybe if he had, he'd still be doing stuff like this.
So I agree with you, he didn't get enough credit for this. And now I'm going to, wherever we're streaming from, I'm talking directly to you, Jim Carrey. He almost came to the festival, and I think he just finished working. And so you're going to see him do something else. We're so sorry that you're not here, and I hope that you hear how much we really appreciate your work.
Adore.
And I hope you'll
Adore.
come here.
Yeah, no, it's,
Watch Truman Show again, too, if you haven't seen that recently. He is mind-blowing in Truman Show. And Man on the Moon, tomorrow night.
yeah, it's so subtle. And it does, I mean, it may not sound like much, but the opening scene where he gets out, and if anyone has ever slept on a sofa bed like that, the way that he just, without sort of any antics, you could feel that, like, yeah, I know what it's like to sleep on a pull-out bed like that. It is not really comfortable. That kind of sort of subtleness was wonderful throughout the film.
It's so essential to the success of the film that we believe that guy exists. If he's just, and her too, if they're just like archetypes or cartoons, then none of it works. Like, we have to believe that Joel and Clem are real people, or the whole thing falls apart.
I do think Jim Carrey's physicality is very underappreciated, as he only gets credit for the big, the mask or these large, crazy movements that he does. But he has some of the most intelligent control over his body and physical appearance, that he can drive a scene from being a very heartfelt and emotional drama to a very comedic and laughable scene. I still think it's unparalleled.
Even in the big stuff, I think he's great. I mean, Liar Liar is a great comedic performance. It just is. I mean, it's straight out there, it's goofy, it's loud, it's big when it needs to be. Even in that stuff, I don't think he got enough credit. So Jim, if you're out there, we love you.
Yeah, I was saying, we were talking, I said, I've always wanted to know what happens on the other side of that door when Truman opens it. And if ever there was a film that needed a sequel, I would love to see what happens on the other side of that door.
Jim, let's do Truman Show 2. Give me a call.
Please.
Sure. Any questions in the audience? Anyone want to talk about anything specific?
Do we have the
general?
microphones ready to go? Have we started with the microphones?
There's a question from the balcony in the center.
Balcony center. It's really funny. The balcony right or balcony left almost never comment. It's always balcony center.
That's where the question people are.
There must be something up there. All right.
I first saw this movie down the street at the art theater when it was new. I'm kind of interested this Ebertfest. Think some of these older movies, looking at them with fresh eyes in 2024. I asked a similar question the last movie. I'm curious, in the post-Me Too era, how this movie might strike you differently now than it did when you first saw it, like the ethics of it.
Oh, the ethics of it. I thought you were asking a slightly different question, but maybe not, because you mentioned Me Too. Matt mentions in his review that Clem could be seen as a manic pixie dream girl, which is a phrase that was coined a few years later as someone who is just there to save the male character. I'm not sure that Kaufman completely avoids that, but I think Winslet grounds it so well that we do see her as a believable human being, maybe not quite as much as Joel. How do other people feel about that? Is she merely a product for Joel's arc, or does she have a good enough arc on her own? I think today maybe she'd have a slightly better arc on her own.
I actually interpret that question differently. If we talk about anything about the Me Too movement, it would be with the doctor and Kirsten Dunst's character. Now, I think that the relationship between Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet was their peers. It's a consensual relationship. There's nothing that I would take about for the Me Too movement.
Well,
but between the doctor and the receptionist would be something more problematical.
Well, I think the film comes down pretty hard on that because she blows it all up. She sends all the tapes out and it all falls apart. So I still think it holds up, though. I hope you do too.
Microphone.
Center, we have a question.
Center, yes. And I think you're standing. I'm not going to make the mistake I made yesterday.
Definitely. I just think we need to own our own messes. Not just the messes of others, or messes in our personal relationships. We have to own and love our own.
I agree.
I agree. The only thing you can do is be the best version of you. And whatever that means, that's the only thing that you can be. You can't be anything other than the best version of yourself. And if you aspire to that, I think you're all right.
And I think the owning of that is acknowledging it. I mean, show me someone who thinks they're perfect, and I'll show you someone who's lying to themselves.
And you know something about dreams. I too, Brian, love the sequence of the house falling apart in the way that it did. Even now, sometimes there are 3 states, you know, like when you're in a dream state or a reverie state. There are parts of my life has actually been so really exciting, and I've done so many things, traveled so much, had experiences that I don't even really talk about or think about that much, but I forget that I've had them until somebody will ask me a question, and for instance, somebody said, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if you were on a yacht in the south of France with Sean Connery, or what's the other one, Roger Moore?" And I said, "Yeah, it would be. You know, I saw that in a movie. Then I thought, oh no, I actually was on a yacht in the south of France with Sean Connery once, and was with Roger Moore too." And I forget. And my daughter and Chris, they make fun of me. They say, sometimes your life, I think you dream walk through your life, and you forget whether your life is real or fantasy. Anyway, so memories are little, they're elusive, and we don't always remember. I was a trial attorney at one time, and when I was cross-examining witnesses, the thing that I honed in on, and I would have all the factual evidence with me, and I honed in on the fact that memory is so imprecise. And we think we remember things exactly as they happen. We very rarely do.
And that's central to the film. I mean, you might say to yourself, oh, how are they changing memories? Memories can't be changed. Memories are changed all the time. Memories are pliable, and we lie to ourselves and we change things. So that's at the core of Kaufman's screenplay. Like, you could say to yourself, how are they changing these things that actually happened? They're not changing what actually happened. They're changing the memory of what happened, and we do that all the time.
Yeah, and if someone had talked, it's one of those things. If you know, as a couple, that they're sort of pulling apart, and if you ask each one of them what is the reason why this is happening, you would wonder whether they were actually in the same relationship, because their perception and their sort of understanding of what happened would be sort of very different. There was a question. Where was it?
Microphone.
Oh, right. Oh, over there?
Microphone.
Okay.
Yeah, to your right, way back in the house.
Okay, yes.
So I've been a huge Jim Carrey fan my whole life, and I've seen this movie for the first time. That was absolutely fantastic. I've never seen the realm of his performance like that before. If you guys want to see a really good Jim Carrey, like more of the aspect of him, it's the documentary it's called Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond. It's about Man on the Moon, which is playing tomorrow. It's fantastic, and it really shows his personality and how far he goes into the depth of how he performs, and I'd just like to recommend that to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Microphone.
From the balcony in the center.
Balcony in the center.
Well,
I think there's a vortex up there.
Yeah, we're the power group. Wanted to say thank you for featuring the film. It's probably one of my favorite films. I think it's about maybe the 4th or 5th time I've watched it. But I had an observation based on what the gentleman commented on earlier, that was a similarity between this one and Cookie's Fortune and Ida B. Wells, is she mentions yellow fever when she's talking about the different hair colors as well. So there's a similarity there too. I don't know if that's a theme going on or not, but I thought that was interesting.
I love random, unexpected themes at Ebertfest. Anyone else?
Microphone. And while we're looking for the next microphone, I wanted to talk about a memory of people who are getting older and have dementia. And one thing that I learned when my mom had dementia, she never had full Alzheimer's, but she had some dementia from a stroke. And there were times that I learned this at about really memory and compassion. It was a beautiful thing that my daughter did with my mother. Once my mother knew us most of the time, but once my daughter came into the room and my mother perked up and she was really happy and she thought it was her. She spoke to Sonia, she called her her sister's name. Her sister had been gone for years. And Sonia was present enough to just go with it. Instead of saying, oh no, oh no, Mom, I'm Big Mom, I'm Sonia. She just went with it and let her talk and let her live that experience. And then, you know, my mom went to the loo. When she came out, she was fully present with us again, but it was just a beautiful thing. It just makes me, this movie makes me think about those kind of memories as well. Microphone.
On your left.
Hi, thank you very much. We come for 10 years and it's a highlight of our year. I have two things to say. First of all, if you don't remember your mistakes, you tend to repeat. So it's very important that we remember. And also, do you think actors get typecast and that's why the Academy sometimes doesn't pick them? I mean, not as much, but like Robert Downey Jr. These people were jumping up and down when he won. And maybe with Jim Carrey too, because sometimes I think about it too, but then of course I go back to The Truman Show, which is one of my all-time favorites.
It took Downey Jr. 40 years to break out of some of his reputation and his issues. It takes a long time sometimes for people to break out of those things. And if you're like, this was 10 years after Ace Ventura, where Jim Carrey was talking out of his butt. And I think there was still, hey, we can't give that guy an award, which is crazy to me, but that's how it works. I do think that happens, yeah. And I think it can take a very long time to break out of that.
And remember what Eric Roberts said the other day, that it took almost 10 years for people not to think that he was the guy in Star 80.
Yeah, from studying to be an actor, one of the first things that you do create when you try and enter the field is your own niche or personal type, so people can recognize you faster, see something that you would fit into or some role, and then that's your gateway or way to enter into working and getting more promotions and the such.
I think it's a little better now because I think there's so much, like, people can do TV series and limited series and different kinds of things, so we don't pigeonhole people as comedy star, action star, as much as we did 20 years ago. I'm hopeful.
Microphone.
Okay, yes. Last question from deep in the house, center.
Okay.
Thank you. So, when this technology becomes available, and I tend to believe it'll be sooner than we care to realize, I think it'll be very popular. I mean, in our society, particularly American society, taking a pill to fix what ails you is so common. It's epidemic. With that said, this is for you, Adam. If we hear, because I'm an older person, we hear that young people don't want to take risks today because they're afraid of failing. They're afraid of the pain or the associated hurt that might occur with relationships or careers, etc. And all us old guys are like, oh, you gotta fail to grow up and learn what it's all about. And by the way, for us older people that say that, we forget the pain that's associated with breaking your heart that first time, or losing a child, or it's deep. I understand why people want to erase that. But with all that said, if people could erase their failures, if they could say, I'm going to take risks because I know that I can get over it without the scars, do you think they would?
Well, I think every day you wake up is a risk because there's always something that could go wrong, no matter where you are in life, what point, what you're doing, whether you're the most successful person in the world or you're at rock bottom. As far as all safety and no chance of failure, I don't truly think that is a world that we'll ever live in. Not as long as there are all of us here. because that's just humanity. But I do believe that risking, going out on a limb, taking a chance on yourself is life. That's just the way that it's gonna be. And as far as my generation, there are still risk takers. There's still a lot of us. I'm on this stage. That's a risk. So
Yeah.
I believe there's a lot of life to live. So
Thank you.
You'll just see the bad ones on Instagram probably, but don't mind them.
I will, just to pick up on your question, probably the thing that hurt me most in watching this movie, and you don't really, it's only there for a moment, but the people who are sitting in the waiting room, and the woman has her dog's belongings, and the man seems to have his son's trophies. It's only there for a moment, but I think it's really a cautionary part of the film that this is what these kind of things could lead to. And it's only there for a minute, but it's there, and it really is a very sort of important moment.
And I think, I'm sorry to jump in here, but I think the movie kind of proves, or one of the points is that if you erase the risk you took because it went bad, you're just going to do it again. Mary hooks up with him again after erasing it. It just happens and happens and happens. So there's no way to cure it, to fix it.
And it's always there, right? We get that even, if you can erase the memory of her beloved pet, that pet is still somewhere in the recesses of their mind. It's there, and it will manifest itself again.
Yeah, and her next pet will die.
On that hopeful note, Brian, we will take a break. I think. Okay, I want to ask, because we have microphones in the audience, I want to move away from this movie for a minute, and for our 25th anniversary, we wanted to let people ask one or two general questions that have nothing to do with a movie generally. Anyone who has a microphone, 2 questions, and then we're going to break for the next film.
The microphone people might be gone.
Oh, are the microphone people gone? Because we said that was, okay, you know what? We're breaking now, and we'll see you at 4:30.
Save your questions for later.
Thank you. Oh, you're right. They used to be too big.